Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and it's the first Saturday of the month. You all know what that means. It's time for the Movie Nerds Club to assemble yet again. And this time, we're going to be doing our top 5 non-MCU Marvel films. Basically, these are my favorite Marvel movies that are not a part of the MCU movies. If we were doing MCU along with it, my favorite would be Captain America Civil War. But since that is in the MCU, it is officially off the table. I'm just going to get straight into the list, but I will say that if you like this video, please be sure to check out the fellow movie nerds in the club. Their videos will be linked in the description below, or if you want to check out more of my videos, there will be a playlist link in the eye in the right hand corner. So, with all the grandstanding and hot dogging out of the way, let's dig in, starting with number 5. Number 5, Blade. When Blade came out, it was literally a year after Batman and Robin, which, even though I consider it a guilty pleasure, is widely considered to be one of the worst comic book movies ever made. DC had been the mainstay in the comic book movie game for some time, and Marvel was just barely on the radar, so Blade was really, in a weird roundabout way, their coming out party. And while I don't think Blade is a perfect movie, in some ways it has not aged well, it still is a lot of fun. They couldn't have picked a better person to play Blade than Wesley Snipes, though Mahershala Ali will be giving him a run for his money, for certain. They gave him just enough lore to keep it interesting without bogging down the story. I liked that. But the reason to watch this movie is the action, specifically the Blood Rager scene at the very beginning. That scene is just brutal, even by 2021 standards. A lot of the CGI has not aged very well. As a matter of fact, in the climactic scene when Blade cuts open Deacon Frost, it clearly looks like the blood was filled in with Microsoft Paint. And Blade himself drops some very weird one-liners like, some MFers are always trying to ice skate uphill. Okay. But I believe that this movie was well ahead of its time. Number 4, Deadpool, aka the greatest apology in cinematic history. In 2009, X-Men Origins was released. It was horrible. It was over the top in all the wrong ways, it was way too melodramatic, and it spit in the face of the pre-established lore that it had been building up for the previous 3 movies. It was not good, but the biggest sin of all may have been not giving Deadpool a mouth. Now, I am not a massive Deadpool fan. I like him just fine. Back there, I have one of his original appearances in a trade paperback, and I enjoy that quite a bit. But here, there are certain things that you need to do to put Deadpool on screen. And chief among them is make him a trash talker, and at least give him a mouth. Even I, in 2009, who had no knowledge of Deadpool, looked at this image and said to myself,
well, that's bullshit.
So Ryan Reynolds was a good boy over the next 7 years and waited patiently and patiently and patiently until he finally got what he wanted. A true Deadpool movie, pretty close to warts and all. And it was spectacular. I had a cold when I saw this movie in February 2016, so maybe seeing this movie was a net positive for me and a nice distraction from the whole cold thing. But this movie is still just as funny as I remember it being. But not only is it just really funny, and not only does Ryan Reynolds make the entire movie, but the story itself, though done before, is actually pretty effective. I won't dig deep into spoilers, but let's just say the Ed Skrein character as the villain is really underrated, and he doesn't get nearly enough credit. He's funny in the right places, and it is serious in the right places. And if a Deadpool movie needs to exist, I'm glad this is the one that we got. Number 3, X-Men Days of Future Past. I love Days of Future Past because it brings about the best elements of what we saw in the original movies. The old cast and the new cast coming together for one epic movie, and I mean epic in every sense of the word. It consistently feels like the X-Men are constantly on the back foot. They're hunted down by the Sentinels, so they need to get this mission done fast. and they know that they have only a short amount of time to get it done. But in order to get it done, they have to confront their past selves. This movie is surprisingly deep. Deep in the sense that it has a theme of rectifying and forgiving your past and trying to move on with the future, for lack of a better word. Legit, one of my favorite scenes in any Marvel movie is when young Professor X and old Professor X meet for the very first time. James McAvoy is just strung out, he's depressed, he just sees no hope. And Patrick Stewart has been on the other end of that. So it's literally the equivalent of, if you met your younger self, what would you say to them? I'd like to believe that if an older Professor X met a younger Professor X, this is what he would say. And this line in particular just gets me right in the feels. Charles, we need you to hope again. Great performances, stellar action, and just a feeling that really this could be the end of everything. It's all done really well, and honestly, the X-Men movie should have just stopped right there, but they didn't, for better and for worse. But at least we have this movie and an honorable mention to the Rogue Cut, which is just as good. Number 2, SpiderMan. Now, I know some of you might be saying, Ryan, you need to add a 2 at the end of that. And let me just say that I like Spider-Man 2 as well. I think it's a great movie as well. But I have the most memories attached with the first Spider-Man movie. It's one of my earliest movie-going experiences. And there was a period where I loved this movie, and then I kind of hated how over the top it was, but as I've gotten older, I think I've gained a new appreciation for this movie, especially now that I have seen some of the other works of its director, Sam Raimi. People like to complain that the Raimi trilogy is too over the top and melodramatic and everything like that. Well, the melodramatic stuff I can agree with to a certain extent, but as far as the over the top stuff goes, this is Sam Raimi. This is a guy who wrote Bruce Campbell to chop off his hand with a chainsaw because it was corrupted by a demon, and then attach that same chainsaw to his hand. That's what we're dealing with here. And as far as the first Spider-Man goes, is it over the top? At points, yes. Casting Willem Dafoe as the villain, you're pretty much asking for that. But when people argue over what is the movie with the true essence of Spider-Man himself, I've gone back and forth on that, but my heart leans towards this first Spider-Man movie. The scene in the movie is the ending, when Spider-Man and Green Goblin have their climactic fight, and Green Goblin just beats the crap out of Spider-Man. Like, it's not even fair. He's throwing him into brick walls, tearing walls down on top of him, stepping on his wrist so he doesn't spin his web. You've just spun your last web. And then at a certain point, something snaps inside Spider-Man, and he's like, it's adapt or die. And so he just goes to town on the Green Goblin, fights back, gains the upper hand, and gets Green Goblin in a vulnerable position. And then Green Goblin flips a switch and becomes Norman Osborn again. And he's like, Peter, you're like a son to me. And Peter just looks at him and he says, I had a father. His name was Ben Parker. During all of this, Green Goblin has positioned his glider to stab Peter in the back, both figuratively and literally. And when Peter says those words, Goblin's like, it's your funeral, hits the button, Spider-Man senses it, does a backflip over it, and just one of the greatest faces of, oh crap, I'm gonna die with lines just ever by Willem Dafoe, where he's just like, oh, and then stabbed right through the chest. Spider-Man 2 is excellent, let's not get that twisted, but Spider-Man, the original, always has my heart. And my favorite non-MCU Marvel movie is Logan. Absolutely no joke, this was a slam dunk #1 for me. The rest were just jockeying for position. This is my ironclad #1 non-MCU favorite Marvel movie of all time, because I have not stopped thinking about this movie since I left that theater in 2017. We all love Hugh Jackman as an actor, and let's face it, as a human being, because of X-Men. And so for him to finally ride off into the sunset, this movie needed to be perfect. And by God, this movie is near perfect. The cinematography and score are surprisingly beautiful. The action is brutal. The movie doesn't go too over the top with the gore. It is very gory. Let's not get that twisted, but it doesn't go over the top with it. Every punch, kick, and death, no spoilers, feels just like your guts are tearing themselves out. But not only is this an excellent send-off for Hugh Jackman, but it's an excellent send-off for Patrick Stewart as Professor X, who, when he started in this series, was the sure of himself Professor X, where he was just sure of everything. But by this time, just everything has fallen apart, and he is solely dependent on Wolverine. From going from a super smart guy to just where he ends up is just heartbreaking. And he has many heartbreaking lines as well, especially this line of, "Logan, you still have time." But not only that, you also have Daphne Keane as X-23. I hope she gets more roles after this because she was excellent here. And honestly, I could gush about this movie for days. Actually, I would like to do a revamped review of it someday. But for right now, I'll just leave it off with this. I want to quote Brian Tallarico from his review from RogerEbert.com. Quote, "It's not just great for a superhero movie, it's a great movie for any genre." I think that's all I've got left to say. That is all from me. Thank you so much as always for watching. Again, please be sure to check out the fellow movie nerds. Their lists will be in the description, and my past lists will be in the eye in the right-hand corner. As far as this channel goes, well, tomorrow is Independence Day, and that means that I'm going to be uploading a review of one of my all-time favorite movies and a 4th of July tradition of mine, 1776. And also, I'll be uploading a channel update since the AFI project has concluded. I'm going to be just giving a brief update on where the channel goes from here, because it's going to be a lot of fun. But if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.